Next on KPBS Evening Edition, when it rains, it pours. From flooded roads and rivers to wet and windy conditions, a strong storm pounds the county. What to expect in the hours and days ahead. Plus, one local city simply wants its water to run again from the tap. The hardship facing residents and restaurants. And we discover what the problem really is. And the power of impeachment, the legal battle playing out on Capitol Hill today. Who's right? Who's wrong? KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Good evening. It's Wednesday, December 4th. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Another storm is making for wet and windy conditions across our county, bringing with it the usual problems. But in the city of Poway, last week's storm is still being felt by residents there without clean water. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman is live now with new answers to what really is the problem for Poway residents and leaders. Matt?
Yeah, Maya, some of that new information that we have is that the contamination of Poway's water can be partially attributed to out of compliance storm drain and reservoir connections. More on that in a minute. But right now we are at Poway City Hall where people are coming out here to get bottled water. Poway says over 1 million bottles have been handed out. People can come here to City Hall or they can come to Lake Poway to get drinking water that they know for sure is safe. Now, this is all coming after brown water reports last week, which led to a boil water advisory that is still in effect right now. A state water official says Poway's storm drain system was overwhelmed during the rains. Untreated stormwater flowed into a reservoir with treated water that was then piped into homes and businesses. Now, that state water official is now telling KPBS Poway will likely be cited and may be fined for the system being out of compliance. State standards mandate that a treated reservoir cannot be connected to storm drains, so contamination issues like these do not happen. Now, more testing is underway. Results have been good so far. No harmful bacteria, but chlorine levels are a little low, which is concerning officials. Poway Mayor Steve Voss, we had a chance to talk to him. He said he's surprised by the state saying part of the water system is out of compliance.
I was stunned by it. Because just a couple months ago in September, we had a annual report of sorts, no mention of this storm drain, clear well non-compliance issue. That's been in operation over 50 years. Never in those 50 years has there been any mention of that. So, yeah, I'm stunned and frustrated. We've got to get these folks back to work. You know, they have rent to pay, they have meals to buy. You know, they're looking forward to Christmas, so we want to get them back to work. And we need the cooperation of Sacramento and the bureaucracy to get it done. We continually have great test results. I'm drinking the water. We need to get this lifted so those folks can go back to work.
And then yeah, you heard about that impact to businesses. The county had to close almost all the restaurants in Poway, but those are being reopened, some of them as they get some temporary permits, but lots of people still out here picking up this drinking water. It's 1 case per car, either at Lake Poway or here at City Hall. Now, the big question people have is, when will this all be over? When will the boil water advisory go away? When will the water for sure be safe to drink? Well, state officials are telling us that if testing goes well, Friday is the day that should be go day. Now, if that testing doesn't go well for some reason, or if there's some hiccups, then that's going to be pushed back to Saturday or even Sunday. Now, the city of Poway has fixed its issue, at least for now, temporarily. Some long-term fixes, though, are still coming, but this storm should not have an impact. There should not be a similar issue that we saw last Friday. Here at Poway City Hall, Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Thanks for that report, Matt. It's wet, it's cold, and it seems nonstop. Another storm system has arrived in San Diego. From your morning commute into tonight, the rain is coming down across the county. There are also flash flood watches in effect. For more on that and our rainfall totals so far, let's go to meteorologist Daji Aswad.
It has been an active day as rain continues to move further to the east. Here's a look at the radar and satellite from earlier today where we saw some heavy downpours. With that being said, there's still some flash flood watches in effect across San Diego County through this evening. As we head through tonight, there will be improvements, but since the past 24 hours, look at these amounts, near 1.5 inches for some areas. As for San Diego at SeaWorld, less than an inch, but still pretty impressive for the last 24 hours. We'll continue to see this precipitation dwindle down as we move through the rest of your Wednesday night and through your Thursday morning, getting drier conditions for Thursday. I have more details on what you can expect past Thursday if there's another chance of wet weather coming up.
Governor Gavin Newsom came to San Diego today, bringing with him hundreds of millions of dollars in emergency aid. The money is to be used to fight homelessness in our communities and others across the state. The governor says Californians shouldn't have to wait any longer to see emergency funding deployed. He says cities and counties should start applying for the money and not count on federal help. Newsom also named Matthew Doherty, a national expert on homelessness, to advise state officials on solving the chronic and growing problem. And Governor Newsom could play a key role when it comes to filling the 50th congressional seat belonging to Duncan Hunter. The Republican from Alpine admitted his guilt for misusing campaign finances, throwing the future of the district up in the air. KPBS Priya Sridhar examines what could lie ahead.
Federal prosecutors said Tuesday that Duncan Hunter resigning his seat was not part of his plea deal, but they believe it was understood by Hunter and his defense team. If Hunter resigns before Friday, Governor Gavin Newsom must hold a special election to fill his seat. But if he waits to resign, Newsom can decide to either hold a special election or continue with a general election and leave the seat vacant until January.
On special elections, you have a smaller turnout, and usually the smaller the turnout, the better it is for Republicans. Democrats need a whole bunch of people to show up to be able to hit critical mass to win elections in contested districts.
If a special election is called, the winner would serve out the rest of Congressman Hunter's term until the following January. That person would then become the incumbent for the November 2020 general election.
That's going to confuse the heck out of voters, and it's going to break up the ability of people to get a message across, particularly whoever, if there was a special election and a Republican would be most likely to win it, that would give them a definite advantage going into November.
Currently, former Congressman Darrell Issa, State Senator Brian Jones, and former San Diego City Councilman Carl DeMaio are running on the Republican side. Amar Campanajjar, Hunter's opponent in the 2018 election, is running as a Democrat. The 50th Congressional District is one of the reddest districts in California and has been represented by both Duncan Hunter and his father for almost 50 years. Priya Sridhar, KPBS News.
Local law enforcement agencies are coming under fire tonight after a new report shined the spotlight on arrests being made locally. The report, commissioned by the ACLU, paints a picture of discrimination when it comes to who's being stopped and searched. Here's KPBS reporter Max Rivlin-Nadler.
The group Campaign Zero looks at policing data to recommend policies that could help end discriminatory policing. It found that the San Diego Police Department and the San Diego Sheriff's Department stopped blacks at a rate of more than 2 times higher than white people and were more likely to search, arrest, and use force against black people during a stop. Samuel Singyangwe is the co-founder of Campaign Zero and wrote the report, which was based on data from July 2018 to June 2019. David Trujillo is the advocacy director of the ACLU of San Diego and Imperial counties.
If you are black in the city of San Diego, you are 219% more likely to be stopped than a white person. You are 59% more likely to have the police use force against you. You are 25% more likely to be searched and 8% more likely to be arrested.
The data was obtained through a public records request by Campaign Zero and was collected by San Diego law enforcement following a 2015 law which requires officers and deputies to gather data about the people they interact with in the field. Trujillo says the findings were not surprising to anyone who has followed interactions between San Diego law enforcement and black and Latino residents. The report confirmed that instead of making arrests and stops in response to 911 calls, police were initiating most of the contacts with these groups. The report found that within those communities, there were groups that were targeted far more than others, like the homeless.
To us, the biggest discovery was the way youth, and in particular youth of color, are being treated. Those who are perceived to have disabilities, especially mental health disabilities, and those who are perceived to be LGBTQ community members. So it shows that there's a broad problem here, and we really need to make sure that we're being transparent in how we're addressing these issues.
The report includes a series of recommendations that local law enforcement could use to de-escalate interactions between police and black people, including providing alternatives to arrests for low-level offenses and implementing more restrictions on when police can use force.
Scaling up the response of mental health professionals rather than police to situations involving mental health crises, scaling up the response of folks who are offering treatment, who are offering support to those who are having substance abuse issues, to those who are experiencing homelessness, rather than continuing to invest in policing them.
In a statement to KPBS, a spokesperson for the San Diego Sheriff's Department wrote that they believed all of their stops, detentions, arrests, and searches to be constitutional and within sheriff's policy, and that the numbers in the ACLU report do not appear to be consistent with their data. It says it will review the report more fully in the coming days. The San Diego Police Department has not yet responded to a request for comment. Max Rivlin-Nadler, KPBS News.
4 legal scholars on Capitol Hill today weighing in on the impeachment case against President Trump. The House Judiciary Committee took the reins of the proceedings one day after the House Intelligence Committee made their report on the matter public. Karen Kaifa reports from Washington.
House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler kicking off his panel's role in the impeachment inquiry against President Trump.
Never before has a president engaged in a course of conduct that included all of the acts that most concerned the framers.
The witnesses, 4 legal scholars, 3 called by Democrats, agreeing the president abused the power of his office.
We 3 are unanimous.
And warning of dire consequences if Congress does not act.
This is precisely the misconduct that the framers created a constitution, including impeachment, to protect against.
The witnesses invited by Democrats also cut at key Republican talking points, like their argument that withholding aid from Ukraine doesn't amount to an impeachable offense because it was ultimately released.
The possibility that the president might get caught in the process of attempting to abuse his office and then not be able to pull it off does not undercut in any way the impeachability of the act.
Based on the evidentiary record before you, what has happened in the case today is something that I do not think we have ever seen before.
But a witness called by Republicans, Professor Jonathan Turley of George Washington University, saw it differently.
Impeachments have to be based on proof, not presumptions. That's the problem when you move towards impeachment on this abbreviated schedule.
Echoing a sentiment of Republicans on the committee.
The clock and the calendar are seemingly dominating this.
In Washington, I'm Karen Kaifa.
The House of Representatives is cracking down on those annoying robocalls. Today, the House approved a bill called the Traced Act to crack down on those who scam Americans with automated calls. Fines would be up to $10,000 per robocall. The Traced Act would also require telecom companies to provide new technologies to protect the integrity of caller ID. That should make it harder for robocallers to impersonate real people, businesses, or government agencies. Supporters hope President Donald Trump will sign it by year's end. Former Vice President Al Gore laid out a serious yet hopeful message to an audience at the Salk Institute. Gore declared that the planet is increasingly showing signs of climate change. KPBS environment reporter Eric Anderson has more on his message.
I'm going to describe the climate crisis.
Gore did not mince words.
We are doing some serious damage.
Wildfires, he says, are threatening California and the rest of the world, and they're increasing in frequency and intensity. Storms are pounding our coastlines and communities, and these extreme events are all symptoms of a planet trying to endure a rapidly warming climate. Gore says fossil fuels are putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere faster than at any time in the last 66 million years. Gore says change is needed, and he's optimistic that people can change, but he asks if they will.
I'm optimistic there too, but again, spoiler alert, the answer to that question kind of depends on you, not just you, but really in meaningful ways, you.
Gore says the nation needs the political will to take the partisan politics out of the climate change debate. And he says, fortunately, political will is a renewable resource.
There are 57 college campuses in the U.S. where the Young Republicans clubs have joined together to petition the Republican National Committee demanding that they change their position on climate.
Gore says progress is being made. He said the expansion of the nation's solar and wind resources are accelerating, but the former vice president said the pace needs to move faster. Gore says the most dire impacts of a changing climate can still be avoided, but he acknowledged some climate change impacts can no longer be undone. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
What can I say?
Tiny pieces of plastic are 1 million times more abundant in the ocean than previously thought. KPBS science and technology reporter Shalina Chatlani spoke to the San Diego researcher who made the discovery.
So we sampled about 9 miles straight offshore here.
Scientist Jennifer Brandon of the Scripps Institution of Oceanography walks down the campus pier. She points to a fishing net with mesh. Brandon says this type of net is what most microplastic scientists have been using to measure ocean pollution, but she realized it might not be the right tool.
This mesh looks really small, and this is the kind of mesh we use to catch plankton, and it's also the kind of mesh we use to catch microplastic. But in between these holes, any plankton smaller than this and any plastic smaller than this can escape through these little holes.
Scientists used to estimate about 10 microplastic particles per cubic meter of water. So Brandon decided to do a recount. She used a bucket with no holes.
What we were finding is when we were counting the teeniest, tiniest microplastics, there were now 8 million particles.
Brandon says that impacts the entire ocean food chain.
The smallest particles that are going to affect the smallest animals were actually much more abundant than those slightly bigger plastics.
Brandon says there's already some evidence that says these microplastics show up in our seafood. Shalina Chatlani, KPBS News.
More than 600,000 people die of heart disease in the U.S. every year, and a new study suggests heart health needs to start early in life. Mandy Gaither has more in tonight's Health Minute.
It's the #1 killer of Americans, but a new study suggests people middle-aged and younger can help prevent future heart disease by lowering cholesterol. The research published in the medical journal Lancet suggests changing diet and exercise habits earlier in life, or even talking to a doctor about taking statins, may make future heart problems less likely. The study tracked records of nearly 400,000 people in 19 countries between the ages of 30 to 85. Researchers found the group most at risk for heart problems related to non-HDL cholesterol later in life were people under 45 years old. The authors say hypothetically, if people in the under 45 age group cut their non-HDL cholesterol levels in half, they'd reduce the risk of later heart problems significantly, from about 29% to 6% for men and 16% to 4% for women. For today's Health Minute, I'm Mandy Gaither.
There's a new national program providing free preventative drugs to uninsured Americans at risk of HIV. The program is called Ready, Set, Prep. To qualify, participants must test negative for HIV, have a valid prescription for the medication, and not have any prescription drug coverage. Gilead Sciences will donate over 2 million bottles of medication annually, enough to treat 200,000 Americans for the next 11 years. President Trump set the goal to end the HIV epidemic in his February State of the Union speech. All 50 states are now dealing with a vaping-related lung injury case. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention has recommended that people not use THC-containing e-cigarette or vaping products, since it has identified vitamin E acetate, often used as an additive to THC-containing products. The CDC reports as of November 20th, officials were dealing with more than 2,000 lung injury cases linked to vaping. Now, as we mentioned earlier, steady rain means potential flooding for some San Diego communities. Chollas Creek flows through a number of low-lying neighborhoods before draining into the San Diego Bay. KPBS Speak City Heights reporter Ebony Monet tells us what's being done to keep it from flooding.
As traffic flows down a wet 54th Street in City Heights, water flows through Chollas Creek. It's out of sight, but environmental experts say its reach is broad.
We have a north fork that's running from La Mesa all the way down to Main Street and then San Diego Bay. The south fork is coming from Lemon Grove in the east and running all the way down and joining the north fork.
Leslie Reynolds is the executive director with a local nonprofit called Groundwork. She's working with the city to address the creek's frequent flooding.
Why hasn't Chollas Creek been fixed yet?
Well, sometimes underserved communities are the last to get the resources they need, but all of that's changing now. We have incredibly dedicated and forward-thinking legislators.
Reynolds shows us one of the challenges the city faces. The creek crosses both public and private land, which limits when and where the city can perform maintenance. Another challenge for the environment is the creek's dated infrastructure, such as concrete channels.
Concrete means that there's no natural filtration for pollution. It means that the water moves at a very high velocity and causes flooding.
Groundwork has a long-term watershed rehabilitation plan to address the creek's erosion and deficient pipes and channels. In the meantime, city officials say teams such as this one will clear drains in critical areas near Choice Creek. And most of the time, these efforts are effective. Ebony Monet, KPBS News.
And this rain is not only causing flood concerns in City Heights, but around the county as well. Lucky for the residents affected, there will be a break for a few days. Meteorologist Daji Aswad has our full forecast.
After lots of wet weather, we're finally going to see some improvements as we move into your Wednesday night and Thursday. Mostly cloudy conditions sticking with us, dropping down to 56 degrees here in San Diego. Overnight low in Oceanside at 51 and cooling down to 47 in Borrego Springs. Mount Laguna, a low of 37. And in Mount Laguna, perhaps some snowflakes mixing in with that precipitation through tonight. But even that will continue to move out towards our east with our low pressure. And behind that wet weather, well, we have high pressure building in for California. As I mentioned, you are drying out, but there's still going to be some clouds available. High of 67 in Oceanside. Clouds passing through San Diego with a high also in the upper 60s. If you're in Borrego Springs, a high of 68 and 51 in Mount Laguna. Continuing into your Friday and Sunday, here's a look at our next system. But notice it is well to our north. So if you do have any plans to travel along Interstate 5 into Sacramento or Redding, that's where we'll have the best chance for some of that wet weather. Eventually, some of those clouds will be translated a little further south here Saturday and Sunday at the coast, but much of the precipitation will remain out of San Diego. Highs remain in the upper 60s through the majority of this week. We'll continue to see tranquil weather for your Friday for inland areas Thursday and Friday. A bit more sunshine Friday with a high 69. Upper 60 Saturday. Clouds coming in from the system to our north rather. Mountain areas, you're in the lower 50s Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Plenty of clouds Saturday and Sunday. And we'll also see clouds picking back up here in the deserts as we head into your weekend due to that storm system, as I mentioned, to our north. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Daji Aswad. Back to you.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, the legal debate for and against impeaching President Trump. Coming up at 7, right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
It's an elementary school where 90% of students qualify for free or reduced lunches. Where there is food insecurity, many families also cannot afford winter coats for their kids. Ashley Gooden has the story of a third-grade teacher in Alabama that's warming hearts in more ways than one.
Anytime I'm able to see a light in a child's eye just because of math or whatever the case may be, it really warms my heart to be able to see those kids.
They warm her heart. Now she's returning the favor.
It makes me sad to hear that, kids out here at this time of year, cold as it is, they don't have coats.
A lot of people don't realize there are many children who go to school without a coat, and not because the child left home and forgot it.
Good, how are you?
Jessica Woods is a third-grade teacher at Tuggle Elementary who realized the need.
I just did it because I love them.
These 4 coats are one of several that she purchased for students with the help of some of her Facebook friends.
I noticed a couple of weeks ago that some of my students weren't wearing coats, so I decided to just take one of those burdens off my parents by going ahead and getting those coats.
More than $500 raised and more than 40 coats for her students and students in other grades.
And for her to reach out and do something like that for her students in her class, I think it sets a good example for the community.
And some say for this community and abroad.
I encourage people to buy for those who don't have anything instead of spending all the money that we spend in department stores for more and more of the same thing.
They warm her heart, and she knows she doesn't have to, but she's returning the favor.
When you have a good spirit and you give from the heart, those around you are blessed, and those blessings, hey, they're awesome.
And once again, that was Ashley Gooden reporting. And just in time for the holidays, a popular line of toys gets the big screen treatment. Rick Damigella has a preview of Playmobil, the movie.
Rex Dasher. For your next mission, we're partnering you with 2 civilians, Dell and Marla.
Those 3-inch plastic figures come to life in Playmobil the Movie.
Well played. This way. After me.
The animated adventure features the voice talents of Anya Taylor-Joy and Jim Gaffigan as a couple who fall into intrigue with secret agent Rex Dasher, voiced by Daniel Radcliffe.
At your service.
The movie is based on the Playmobil toy line created by Hans Beck in 1974.
Tell the boss Dell's here to see her.
I got Adele down here asking to see Miss G. No, not Adele. That would be awesome.
While original Playmobil figures' faces have a simple cherubic design, Playmobil the Movie adds more features and expressions to its characters, while maintaining the overall look of the original toys.
Well, well, look what we have here.
Adam Lambert makes his voice acting debut as Emperor Maximus.
And what do we have here?
Your worst nightmare.
You're not a pinata full of bees.
In Hollywood, I'm Rick Damigella.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us tonight. Have a great evening.